Welcome. This is my new video series called I'm Home, and as you can read in the title, the topic of today's discussion is going to be the inner child. Now, this idea came up simply watching videos online and whatnot, and one of the explanations that kind of drove it home for me was the analogy was, where you're at right now is an adult, wherever you are in this time of the world, or whenever you're watching. um, and wherever you are at right now in your life, going through a dark forest and you've got a lantern, surveying the area and seeing, what, using your discernment as to what you should and shouldn't avoid, and, if there's any threats or anything like that, how to navigate the world, right? Whilst you have accompanying you your inner child, the younger version of you, the kid that had all that whimsy and magic and, let's just say, creativity back then, right? Before the world decided to beat you down with its expectations and responsibilities, right? So, having that analogy of going through a dark forest, shining the light on things that are allowing you to navigate through this dense forest, and having your inner child accompanying you, it, you know, as an adult, I mean, you, in order to gain a level of discernment, you have to have some kind of life experience. You deal with people that disappoint you. You disappoint other people, and at times it can turn people jaded, and that's not always what we had in mind for ourselves. That child has all that whimsy and curiosity about what the world could be. And then once you get older, you're just looking around, trying to figure out why things aren't the way they were sold to you. Why someone sold you a lie. You're not the only one. And that's kind of the problem that we're in. The dissociation of our society, where we were at, just even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, if that even. As you can see, the posting of this, I mean, granted, doesn't necessarily matter. It's 2026, so we've gone through COVID, and it's still a social experiment that is continuing to this day. So my point is, we had more of a trusting society, and with everything as to where we are at now, it has become such a low trust society. And even just in the sense of making friends, you have someone that will backstab you because innately as humans, we are selfish, and we only prioritize our own survival. And with respect to that, because, well, if you're going to get into the nitty gritty of it, whose bloodline are you trying to continue? Yours or mine? It's a simple it's a simple equation in the world of life, or at least as a human being. So, of course, you're going to be selfish. Of course, you're going to have your best interests out for yourself. And that's kind of the reason why this started, or this idea came about. Not just because of the things that I've consumed on social media and whatnot. And it aside from the people that I have in my own life, I can't be there for everybody. I can't be there for everybody, realistically. And this is basically having a sit-down discussion. This is having an open discussion of, I mean, obviously the topic that we have at hand here, but it's the problem with us as humans is that one-on-one we can have a conversation and an open dialogue. Great, we can exchange ideas and perspectives as to why we see the world the way that we do, right? But something interesting happens when we start getting into groups. No matter what, tribalism will always proceed to take priority. And taking priority in that regard, because that's survival. It's just boiling it down to its simplest form. It is survival. And when tribalism comes into play, certain things are pushed to the side so that we can overall survive. Now, unless you have. Now, I grew up as an only child. I have older siblings, but I grew up by myself. And that kind of gets exacerbated once, things happen within the family, divorce ends up happening. And not only do you lose the father in that dynamic of the breakdown of the family structure, but you would also lose the father. You lose the father initially, but you also lose the mother. Why? The mother now has to be the full-time caregiver and provider, and now she's working 40 plus hours a week just to put food on the table. Who's taking care of the kid or kids, right? So they have to grow up on their own. And somebody such as myself, who didn't necessarily have a normal upbringing in that sense, where, you know, 20 years ago, it was normal to go out and uh, be in the neighborhood, right? It wasn't necessarily the case for me. I grew up very isolated. And while that helped in certain ways, in the sense of alleviating, stress of, oh, well, where is he at, right? I'm not I'm not just out and about roaming the streets like a degenerate, right? Um, so in that sense, it kept me safe in a way. But with that safety, also then does come with cons, and with that, that's where I'm able to have seen the way people react. It just what happens simply as tribalism. And when when you get to that point in your life and you're not necessarily, tribalism is biological. It's innately ingrained in our lizard brains, right? It's the animal instinct of our own. You can look to wolves. They roam in packs. Granted, there's always going to be an alpha, and then everybody else falls in line, right? But there's always a pack. And if that's true within nature, we are a part of nature. So while, yes, we are sophisticated individuals, right? Because we're able to have a conscience. Not to say animals don't as well. It's just that lizard part of the animal instinct takes over. We just think that we're more sophisticated and we don't think much of that, right? But it's always there. And you take away the fundamentals, and you take away the fundamentals of the self and education and discipline and all of that as a human, and you're basically back down to the primal level of an animal, right? And then on top of that, one quote I came across was very very telling. You give someone the ability to feed you, you also give them the ability to starve you. And not allowing that to happen, you have to be able to go through it. And that's the only way you can really grow from that and mature, being independent. We have all these words, and especially nowadays, trying to change the definitions of our vocabulary. Um, who are we to denounce? I mean, it's 2026, and that's after Christ. Um, an entire lineage. I mean, there's no way we can redefine what it is biologically to be an animal. And we are so sophisticated that we can we can believe our own lies. We can believe our own lies, and that's kind of the issue at hand. At least in today's society, with what we think we can change, and We just have to get back down to basics. And with that comes right back into the inner child. As you grow older and become an adult, at least go through the different phases, right? You know, you tend to not have as big of a social circle as you used to, let alone in the sense of, when you go to school, you have the time to be around all these different people, mainly because you're all forced into the same environment. Versus when you get older and you got a 40-hour or more week that you have to do in order to pay the bills and whatnot, and then depending if you've got kids or not, and then even that I've seen with people that just isolate even more. And granted, it's all for the children, right? But God forbid we throw bombs on, we rain down freedom on other third world countries, right? Can't stop that meat grinder of a machine, right? So I've always considered myself an observer. And it's what has gotten me into originally psychology and then more definitively sociology, because you can't get away from it. And I would say having the inner child, confronting and healing your inner child it's like it exposes I lost my train. Too many thoughts. And this goes into my own ADHD and whatnot, so it just never stops. um, anyways, when you have a child, it makes it easier for one to come to terms with that. Now, the best way I can explain it is the reason why that happens is because you can see yourself in that child. You can see yourself in your own child. And so it brings that level of reflection. And with that, that's where everything kind of comes to, full circle, where, or you have parents that say, "Oh, I just want to give my child everything I didn't have." But innately that's selfish, because what you didn't get or receive isn't what your child needs in today's society, in today's world. What can you provide your child if you're living in idiocracy? And every day it becomes more evident that that's what we are headed towards. Not to say that's what I want. It's just whatever the oligarchs, our overseers are deeming to happen with the way society is going. The lack of education in our school system, and really having that just become a parent's free daycare, and that isn't really great. You take away education and you're going to have a generation of individuals that, as we see, can't even read. So as far as I could tell, I'm like one of the last generations that was actually taught cursive in school. And not just writing in general, but being able to understand cursive and to like write in cursive. It does require a different level of activation in your brain. I mean, it's simple as, if you don't teach cursive in school, how can you read the Declaration of Independence? Because that's in cursive. So what do we do? What are we doing? And even at that, just is a whole other topic. And coming to the realization of reflecting with my own inner child. Am I where I want? Am I where I pictured myself to be as a kid? Not particularly. It is a longer road than we anticipated. Let's just put it that way. It's a longer road. And Not to say that we aren't working towards what we envisioned as, a child. Um, I can at least say that I haven't had my my creativity and the whimsy of fuck it, let's just do it, right? Even something as simple as this video, propping up the camera and sitting down and having a conversation with you. That then ties into the title of this video series. If you had the opportunity to be the person your inner child needed in that healing process, right? Can't ever change, can't ever turn back time. Just keeps moving forward, right? And especially as a man, we're we're we lack physical touch. Let alone aside from, the the physical constraints of opening up to one another, right? We lack physical touch. And that ties into all the other things, but I would say mainly we lack physical touch. We don't necessarily open up with one another as the opposite sex would, or the opposite gender. Um, and we don't hug each other enough. Let alone we don't get it enough from our own fathers. I'm not complaining. It's just my own observation. And if I had to be, and healing your own inner child is uh, becoming your own parent. Really, I mean, eh, all a child needs is they can't support themselves. Let's just say, I mean, granted, we had child labor and stuff like that back in the good old days of just about 100 years ago with the industrial complex and whatnot. And then we started implementing rules and regulations, OSHA, you know. So, yes, I mean, in something you can go read your own self if you can read, right? Just get it on Audible. Lord of the Flies. That was a book when I read in school that shined a light, and if anything, that was like intro intro to psychology, because children are supposed to be these loving little balls of joy, but when you take away their humanity, tribalism ends up forming, hierarchy still comes into play. It's not just an adult thing, it's biological. And that's kind of just what no matter what, you can't run from biology. And we can try to reframe things, redefine them, but at the end of the day, your privileges are your privilege. Your privileges are the cards you were dealt with. So lean into them. Why not? Right? Hell, I wish I could play basketball, but I was never tall enough. Or you're playing. I don't know the exact positioning, but shit. When I was in school, I would like to have been under the hoop, but you need to be a certain height. We 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 don't have any qualms with that in sports, technically speaking, right? Um, because if you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage, sure, you can still win, but is it going to be harder? Yeah, much harder. So lean into your privilege. So going on 20 minutes now. I'm going to wrap it up here and come around full circle. The idea of this video series of I'm home. What is the most getting a little deep my own self. one of the things that when I was a child, after the divorce and everything, one of the things that would bring me joy, at least from my own parent, right? There's nothing better than the scent of Marlboro Red on the leather jacket. And that's because when my dad would come home and I'd be spending the nights at his place, I knew Dad was home. And that has always stuck with me. And that is where I'm upholding the mantle for my own self. I'm home. Let's talk. How was your day? What did you do? What gave you challenges and complications? What tried to steer you off track? What could you have done better? Or how could you have reacted better? Even if it was something that was just minute, not even you know, throwing you off the rails, where you're shaking your fist because of road rage, right? um, it kind of comes down to um, the simplistic nature of PTSD, in the sense of, okay, I've got a light here, checking my surroundings. Okay, there's the light is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red dots on my camera because it's recording. But having that moment to take a step back and realize what your reality really is, and instead of, just being in your head. And if you've made it this far, as you can see, we're not polished on this, but we're still making an effort, as you should too. And not to say that anybody is a scholar because they have a camera and a microphone, but it takes some kind of courage in order to put yourself out there. So this isn't my first video. I've done these things plenty of on my own accord for my own personal usage and whatnot, as well as, growing my portfolio on Instagram and having all that be exclusive for the time being, as to when I started it and to kind of where we're at now. And if you're watching this, if this is the first video you ever saw of me, shameless plug, but you can get an insight into my own psyche. You can get an insight into my reality, why I am the way I am, and maybe that connects with other people. And if I can't necessarily feel the connection with others in social settings, just because of tribalism and social hierarchy and all that fun jargon, right? We have hierarchy in the male, in the male, uh, in the male systematic gender, as well as with female. They have their own hierarchy, and then you have to marry the two together and make it all make sense, right? And that's just kind of where we're at. And that's why I've wanted to start this, just as an open discussion. And I don't think enough people are having that. And, granted, the comment section will be open on this. You can't control it. You know what I'm saying? And if you disable it, are you really having an open discussion? So I will know if you've made it this far. Okay. Yeah. What would we put? If you've made it this far, I would like you to comment down below. I didn't think I didn't think this far. Might just jump cut it. We'll see, or I might just leave it in so you can understand how I operate. If I were to have you leave anything down in the comment section at this marker, simplicity would be, I'm here. Yes, I'm here because I am home. Let's have a conversation. Right? They are very close together to one another. But I know you've made it this far. Whether you're here for this one video or you're here for this video series and the journey that comes of this. Today's topic was the inner child. It's a very deep it's a deep conversation. We're at 25 minutes here, and there's plenty more to be coming. So with that, if you made it this far, comment down below. I'm here. We'll see you in the next one.